Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the conversation on TOS Television Network, your digital first Pan-African network. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, and we're reaching you from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. My name is Ade Suwalsi.
And my name is Merciful Ajinomo. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning. I
How
was
are
waiting
you?
for that with a smile. I'm very well, thank you.
I always say good morning.
Yes, and I always wait for you to say good morning.
All right.
How are you doing, though?
Good,
I'm very well, thank you.
All right.
All right, before we kickstart the show proper, we'll be bringing you the quote of the day. Don't let the fear of losing, deny you the excitement of winning. So don't just focus on the losses. Don't focus on the process. Focus on the journey and the end product and everything. Winning, there's a sort of joy that, success or winning or accomplishing a task or anything brings to you, that you basically just forget the whole challenges and everything that you had to go through to get there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the quality of time you spend losing and trying and getting the experience, getting different experiences, it affects the quality of results that you get.
Yeah.
So when the quality of result is great, I think you should forget about what has happened and celebrate it.
Exactly.
So don't allow the pressure of the experiences that you've had before the success overweigh the success, the feeling of the success and everything.
Yes, what Merciful said right there. Okay, we move straight into development across Africa. And then, so the first story here is from Chad. And as we probably already know, Chadian President Idris Deby passed on yesterday. He was aged 68 years old. TOS News guarded that he was killed on Tuesday while commanding his forces against the rebels. Chadian Electoral Commission on Monday announced that Idris Deby, who has been in power for 30 years, won his sixth term in office. President Deby, who campaigned for peace and security in the country, was re-elected with 79.32% of the vote cast. The result was released on Monday, shortly after the army said it had defeated a rebellion launched on election day, that was on April 11. The Chadian army said it killed more than 300 enemies and took 150 as prisoners. The army added that they lost 5 soldiers in the fight. Mr. Deby's former Prime Minister, Albert Padaki, came second with 10.32% of the votes cast, while the first woman to run in the presidential election in charge, Lidi Basimda, came third with 3.16% of the votes.
That's a story right there.
Yes, very great sad story.
Yeah, overall, still in development across Africa. We move over to Tanzania, where the country approves construction of East African oil pipeline. Tanzania's government has given thumbs up to the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline, also known as the Uganda-Tanzania crude oil pipeline, a 1,445-kilometer project stretching from the coastal region of Tanga to Uganda. The country's Minister for Energy, Dr. Medad Kalemani, said that the negotiation process that started since May 2017 has been completed. As she said, this paves the way for the start of the $3.5 billion pipeline. The project, which is intended to transport crude oil from Uganda's oil fields to the port of Tanga, Tanzania on the Indian Ocean, is expected to provide between 10,000 and 15,000 jobs once it starts. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan made her first foreign trip last week as she traveled to Uganda to oversee the signing of the agreement with her Ugandan counterpart.
Well, anything for the development and growth of the African continent. I'm in support of it.
True.
Okay, we move over to Zimbabwe, where, they're set to free 3,000 prisoners in a bid to ease the congestion in Zimbabwe's jail and to reduce the threat of COVID-19 pandemic. Those to be released had been convicted of non-violent crimes. Those convicted of crimes such as murder, treason, human trafficking, and sexual offenses will not benefit. All female imprisoned for non-violent crimes and who served a third of their sentences are to be released, as well as all disabled persons convicted of non-violent crimes. Mnangagwa also commuted death sentences to life sentences for many prisoners on death row. Zimbabwe still has the death penalty but has not hanged anyone in years. Before the amnesty declared by President Emerson Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe's prisons have a capacity of 17,000 prisoners, but held about 22,000. That's a lot. That's like an overpacked jail. Very, very overpacked. And
I think it's actually the best
reform
process, to free up the space.
free up,
And
yes,
it's actually
exactly.
good news for the families of those who have been released and everything, because it's a miracle.
Look, exactly. But it's quite applaudable.
Yeah, all right. The last story for Development Across Africa for this morning section is coup plot. Charges against Mali's ex-Prime Minister radio host dropped. The charges against several personalities, including a former Prime Minister and a star radio host since December, accused of preparing a coup d'etat with mysterious outlines, has been dropped. This was confirmed by Mali's Supreme Court on Monday. And nearly after 4 months in detention, the 5 detained personalities, including the activist and radio host Mohamed Yusuf Bathili, known as Rasbath, were released on Monday afternoon. An ex-Prime Minister Boubou Cissé appeared in the case as the possible instigator of this alleged new coup. An arrest warrant was issued for him in late 2020, but he was not arrested. Reacting in a statement, Cissé said, "The decision by the Supreme Court puts a definitive end to the sinister case and hopefully to the unnecessary persecution and attempts to undermine his honor and dignity as part of an imaginary plot."
All right, that's what you can take, on this segment of the conversation. That's the development across Africa. I hope we're able to, bring you up to speed or up to date, news and happenings across the African continent. Okay, so we're going to bring you COVID-19 updates from across Africa just about now.
TOS TV Network mobile app is now available. You can now catch up on our breaking news, stream our programs live, watch out for the latest update on sport and politics as they unfold. You can also get notifications for our upcoming programs and events. All these on our TOS TV Network mobile app, available on Apple Store and Google Play Store. TOS TV News from Africa by Africans.
Being a journalist means in-depth analysis that unravels hidden truths, that question the status quo and fact-checks government.
These criminal elements hiding under the cloak of surveillance contractors are the APC elements.
Do you have facts to prove that? Being a journalist means waking up every day with a burning desire for peace, equity, and justice for all citizens.
We're being told that the choice you have is to take the lesser of two evils.
It means patriotism via the prism of objectivity and accountability. It means giving my platform to the masses to discuss issues that matter to them.
Some of them, if they bring budget and the budget they lose, some of them sleep. They're going to ask how much you are on. I have it.
Thereby shaping government policies and laws. My name is Osasu Ignatia, and I am the People's Journalist.
Welcome back to the conversation showing on your digital first Pan-African news network, TOS Television. And don't forget, you can always be a part of the show by following us across all our social media platforms at TOS TV Network on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, live stream our content on our website, www.tostvnetwork.com. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It's that time where we bring you some of the headlines from the national dailies we have this morning for you. We'll begin with Blueprint from the very top. Unity Bank records 42.71 billion naira gross earnings in 2020, and that can be found on page 23 of the Blueprint. And under that, we see NNPC assures end to fuel scarcity as queues return in Abuja. Others, and that particular story can be found on page 18 of the Blueprint. And under the Blueprint tag there, presidency, no room for another national confab. And we have two writers underneath that story. The first says Buhari won't be bullied, intimidated. And the second, federal government slams UK over asylum for IPOB element. Amidst fiscal crisis, federal government state vow not to go to CBN. And that can be found on page 22 of the Blueprint newspaper. And the very obvious headline there, after 30 years in power, 37-year-old Kaka Debi succeeds slain father as Chadian leader. And we have four writers on that story. It's a coup and unconstitutional, coming from a right activist. And the second is no, his long history of visiting battlefields doesn't make this a coup. And we have a reaction from Buhari here. Debi's demise setback for insurgency fight. And that's coming from the president of Nigeria. And Macron, Netanyahu extol ex-leaders' virtues. That can be found on the Blueprint newspaper. And just livestock industry critical to economy, coming from Lawan. And the right under it says, bill to establish National Livestock Bureau scales second region. That can be found on page 5. And then Senate probes CCT chair Umar over assault on security man. That can be found on page 14. NYCN to Buhari, attack on Pantami targeted at your best brains. And that can be found on page 7. Passenger loads MMA 2 security man who returned missing 2.3 million naira. That can be found on page 7. And the very last headline for the Blueprint newspaper this morning is FIRS directs companies within free trade zones to file tax returns. That can be found on page 22 of the Blueprint. All of these stories can be found on the Blueprint newspaper.
Yes, but I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about, Idris Deby taking over as, leader or president of Chad? Because I do know that they did not run a monarchy in Chad. And so I do know that also. Yes. Okay. They don't run a monarchy. I don't think they run. They did an election. If it was a monarchy, I don't think there would be an election. So they did an election. They had runner-up. They have vice president. So why is the son taking over just a day?
Ordinarily, the first runner-up should have taken his place.
Yeah, if there's no vice president, because the elections were just last
That's why
week.
the right activist saying that it's a coup.
Yes, I'm wondering why African. But I think we need to get leadership right in this continent. I think that's one of the problems that Africa is faced with, aside from corruption and all of that stuff. And another thing is we haven't gotten leadership right. People want to stay there. The father had been there for over 30 years. He was going to serve another 6 terms.
And now we want the family to continue.
Exactly.
So they do not want to let go of power.
Exactly.
And that's very typical of an average African person. And we think that, we hope that all of this should change soon. Because it all comes from what we'll be talking about, corruption.
Corruption. Honestly. All right, moving away from that to the Daily Trust newspaper, starting from the very top as well. And the first headline there says, commuters stranded as fuel scarcity rages in Abuja, others. And beside that, EFCC detains ex-Zamfara governor Yari. And then the very gaping headline on the Daily Trust newspaper says, governors unanimous on killing of all bandits and terrorists. That's coming from Kaduna State Governor El Rufai. 3 riders under that headline. The first one, Umahi to returnee headsmen, stay where you are. Ebonyi governor's pronouncement in good faith. That's coming from the ACF. Unemployment, root cause of insecurity. That's coming from Fireme. And then just underneath the picture of the day where we see, vehicles queuing for fuel in Abuja yesterday. Debi's death, Nigeria and Boko Haram insurgency. And underneath that, 30 bandits, 10 residents killed as police repel attacks on Zamfara villages. Police rescue girl from 10-year-old confinement in Kano. And then the last headline on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. It says, federal government warns UK against granting asylum to IPOB members. All of these stories are inside the Daily Trust newspaper. Just grab a copy.
All right, very quickly, we move over to the Leadership newspaper. We begin from the very top as well. Nigeria may lose 32 billion naira annually to insecurity in schools. And that can be found on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper. And the very obvious headline there is Buhari not intimidated by succession agitations. That's coming from Presidency, and the writer underneath the story says, rules out another national confab, says UK asylum for IPOB members disrespectful, sabotaging anti-terror war. And just beside the picture of the day where we see the President Muhammadu Buhari, with some presidential aides during Ramadan lecture hall at State House. The first story there is, please kill 30 bandits in Zamfara, that can be found on page 9. And fuel queues will disappear soon. NNPC GMD assures Nigerians, can be found on page 6. Cement price to remain high as Senate declines intervention. That can be found on page 6 as well. And then Senate probes CCT chairman over assault on security guard. And just underneath the picture of the day, talking about Debbie's death, constitutional crisis looms in Chad as son takes over. And the writer says, world leaders mourn him. And then just to the international segment of the paper, that's Derek Chauvin guilty in death of George Floyd. And that can be found on page 6 of the Leadership newspaper.
Away from the Leadership newspaper to the Nigerian News Direct, the very first headline there says, angry Jusun Passan officials stage walkout after Ngige fails to appear for meeting. And then beside that, APCOD quarterly economic report Q1 2021, and then the AFCFTA, Nigerian firms to access 666.17 billion naira in African markets. That's coming from Emefiele. And then to the very obvious headline there, fuel queues elimination. NNPC increases daily PMS truck out with 1,661 trucks as petrol queues black marketers surface in Abuja and others. That story is on page 16 of the Nigerian News Direct. And then just underneath the picture of the day, Ondo Tribunal strikes out Jagede's petition against Akeredolu, BMO to PDP, no terrorist sympathizer in Buhari's administration. And then the last headline on the Nigerian News Direct newspaper says, Senate to investigate CCC chairman for alleged assault on security guard. Those are the headlines on the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And that is the, I think that's the last newspaper we're
that's the last one.
Okay.
All right. So which of the stories, interest you the most?
I think it's still on the Chadian president, really, because I'm waiting to see how this plays out and how this pans out. I think one of the headlines that you read out, I can't remember what paper, says constitutional crisis looms, because of all of that. I don't know what the constitution carries, how they select their leaders, what it's supposed to be. I don't know if it's different from what we have here in Nigeria, because I know that they have more prolonged, their presidents or their leaders have more prolonged term. I think that's why the Debbie could stay in power for 30 years. And then even while he was re-elections and all of that stuff. And then when he was re-elected, how can you be in power for 30 years and then you want another 5th or 6th term? Yeah. Okay, so he passed on. When I heard the news that he passed on yesterday, quite sad news, but my reaction was like, oh, they'll finally have to elect a new president.
A new person coming.
Suddenly, his son is taking over. Why? It's not a monarch system. Why you... The presidency or the leadership of Chad is not hereditary. You cannot pass it on to your son. If you have to hold another election, hold another election. They just recently held an election and maybe the country cannot afford to do that again. Okay, there's a vice president. There's a first runner-up. Those are people. Let them have it. I don't know. Why should
I really do anticipate how all of this, eventually unfolds and what eventually happens. Because whatever is going to happen, the whole world is looking at that country. African continent is looking at that country and will learn from it. So I really do hope that something is done about it, and we do hope that democracy remains a stay, because that's what we've been fighting for across all of the African countries.
Because I do know that going by what happens in Chad and whatever, the son, who's 37 years old now, could stay in power till he's probably 60 or 70 before they have another president, which is quite sad. Like a child that was born 30 years ago of only seen one president in Chad. Do you know what that means?
Oh my God.
Wow.
All right, I think you should just grab a copy of any of the newspaper we've read out to you this morning, and just get the details of each of the stories that we've read out this morning. That's the most you can take on the newspaper review segment of the conversation. We'll go on a break now. When we return, Adeswa will be taking you through what's trending on social media. Do stay.
Welcome back. It's about that time where I bring you what is trending on social media. But before we get there, as I always tell you, you can be a part of the conversation by following us across all social media platforms. Just follow TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and just subscribe on YouTube. It's still TOS TV Network, so you don't miss out on anything or be left behind. We don't want you to be left behind. And also, you can just stream the conversation on www.tostvnetwork.com. Okay, right back at what's trending on social media. Everyone has been talking about Judge Floyd's trial and then the conviction of Derek Chauvin finally, right? But Daniela Frazier has been trending on social media for the last 24 hours. Daniela is a 17-year-old girl that recorded the whole video that we saw of Derek Chauvin, his neck on Judge Floyd and all of that stuff. So the video that trended that has probably brought justice for Derek Chauvin was recorded by Daniela Frazier, and then she has been trending on social media for the last 24 hours. And I'm going to read out a few tweets to that regard for you. The first one is from @Astro_Vixen. And she says, #Daniela Frazier has such regret that she did not make a move or stand up. She ultimately made the best decision for not only herself, but for the justice of George Floyd, but also for the usual treatment of Black Americans. She must understand that her recording is a historic stand. The next one is from Valerie Jarrett. History should remember the incredibly 17-year-old Daniela Frazier, who had the strength and composure to capture the murder of George Floyd on video. Without her video, there may never have been justice. And then the last tweet here says, it's from @Rep Wilson, and it says, I pray that #Daniela Frazier, who is age 17, bravely recorded Derek Chauvin as a murdered George Floyd, an act of courage that, as she testified, has haunted her ever since, can find peace tonight. The nation is so proud of you and so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What's your reaction to that one, Masfo?
All right, yeah, it's actually like, it's like a calm, it's like a feeling of relief, of calmness, because we spoke about this issue yesterday, how the family of George Floyd, everyone was watching, the whole world was actually waiting for how all of this pans out. And definitely, according to what has been said, justice has prevailed. He has been found guilty. But we all know that without the footage of Daniela Frazier, this wouldn't have happened. This shows the importance, the essence of the media. The role the media has to play in all of this. One of the functions is surveillance function. Means it shows light in the darkest areas. If she was not there, if there was no one to capture, what would have happened is what people were saying. We may now even see that he was guilty, because before they brought about the footage, in all of the courts and everything, the Minneapolis police people, they were saying, I think he was having some health issues and all of that. So if all of this, if the video was not out, we would have been smiling. Some people wouldn't have been smiling, because everywhere you should see the reactions on internet. You should see the people say, oh my God, they were praying that, there was justice. People that were, very sad before, they're like, if this can happen, there is hope for humanity in the future. There's hope for people who are suffering racism, who are suffering, you know, just colorism and every other thing. So my own is people should, you know, just be very accountable. Wherever you are, try to take matters into your hands in terms of doing things that you can do.
Exactly.
Because you remember, safety is number one. Because with the NSAS protesting, we had some people who were capturing the police, and they reported on Twitter that they were, you know, shouted on, they collected your phones and everything. So it depends on the environment you are. Wherever you are, you can always tell a story. Every person can tell, no matter how small you are. So we see a 17-year-old girl bringing joy to the family of George Floyd.
Yes, exactly. But it was quite sad that I think I was watching her at the stand where she felt really guilty that she didn't stand up, she didn't say anything, she just stood there and recorded it. But that was the best she could do at the time. You know, she's a teenager, she probably didn't understand that. But I think with her trending, what people are just trying to tell her, look, without you, this guy wouldn't have actually, you know, got injustice. So you did the best you could do for him and for the world at the time you could do it. It's quite sad that he passed away. It's quite sad that he died and that had to happen to him. But without you, without your footage, we wouldn't have gotten this far. And I think it's important that she knows that and she understands that, so she can have some sort of circle, some sort of peace that, look, I did the best I could do at this time and I did something good, I did something right.
And the Black Lives Matter movement will always remember her name.
Yes,
trust me.
Very well, thank
always.
you. So thank you, Daniela Fraser, for what you did, you know, in the trial and getting justice for George Floyd. All right, that's what you can take on what is trending on social media and the conversation this morning. We will go on a break now, and when we come back, we'll be taking you on the big story.
North to South Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Watch us on television, channel 138 on TSTV Africa.
Welcome back to the conversation showing on your digital first Pan-African news network. And it's time for the big story, the crux of the program. And this morning we'll be talking about insecurity, the rise in criminal activities, analyzing government efforts and the solution. Now, Nigerians' major insecurity challenges can generally be traced back to the coming of Boko Haram and the activities some 10 years ago. And this gave rise to other groups like the ISWAP terrorists, Darul Salam sect, among others. Similarly, the government's inability to effectively tackle these challenges gave rise to the increased presence of armed militia groups, bandits, kidnappers, and armed robbers who now rule the nation's forests. Although many have condemned some of the government's strategies to ending the menace, including giving amnesty to repentant terrorists and bandits, others think it is a step in the right direction. Joining us to discuss more on this, the nation's growing security challenges and X-raying government efforts and the solutions, is Mr. Amadine Uyi, and he is a defense correspondent. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
So first of all, we'd like to ask, how did it get this bad? The issue of insecurity, waking up every morning to one issue of kidnap or bandit attack or another. How did it get this bad?
Okay, first of all, we'll look at it from two perspectives. The first perspective is, let us remember that the issue of banditry, especially in the Northwest and the North Central, was not very common. We had the problem of terrorism which was mainly domiciled in the northeast. And we had splinter groups also stage managing several operations in the northwest and the north center. So we can say that the issue of banditry and kidnapping is a new and emerging security challenge. That is the first perspective. But the second perspective, which finally I think answers your question, is the insensitivity of government to the security challenges, also the failure of intelligence institutions to live up to their responsibilities, and not only intelligence institutions, there is also blame on the part of the parliament, because the parliament are meant to proffer a parallel oversighting responsibilities to these institutions and organizations. So when they fail, the parliament is meant to bring them in check. So I would say the insensitivity of government and their inability to be able to come up with a new strategy to nip it in the bud when it was growing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are a hypocritical people. We have refused to tell ourselves the truth and refused to address the challenges as they exist. What I mean by refuse to tell ourselves the truth or we refuse to address the challenges is that we bring out several tags which does not reflect the current situation. Over the years, we have had farmers' headers clashes. We have had armed gunmen attacking communities. Those were attacks that watered down the real situation. So, because we're able to coin these tags to describe the events, there was no commensurate effort to be able to tackle them exactly for what they were. So in a nutshell, the challenges were new, but a failure of government institutions at all levels to be able to live up to their responsibilities and earn their taxpayers' pay.
Okay, let me take you up on that one. The failure of governments, living up to their responsibility and all that. I don't know that dollars, millions of naira have been spent, on having to curb insecurity in the country. Strategies have been put in place, but we're seeing little to no change, right? So what do you think that the government hasn't been doing right in line with, curbing insecurity in the country, despite all of the spending?
Yes. If you look at the figures as a Nigerian, you will be amazed. You will also be appalled. Between 2015 and 2019, Nigeria spent almost 3 trillion naira on insecurity, on its military. So you see that between 4 years, we are spending almost 3 trillion naira. If you now look at the 10 years figure, like I said, you will be alarmed. But it's not just spending. There must be an effective strategy. The security situations have metamorphosed. Therefore, our strategies must also change. Whether we like it or not, we have come to the point where we need an alternate security. I don't know what you want to call it. Whether local community vigilantes, whether community policing, whether state policing, but we are all unanimous in agreeing that there must be an alternate security network. Not just one that will bear the name, but one that will equally be equipped at that local level to be able to handle whatever security challenges. A few years ago, when the United Nations said we were grossly under-policed, we had an approximate 1 policeman to 1,000 persons. We did not take it serious. All these were signs and indices that we were heading to Golgotha. But as it is now, the chicken has come home to roost, which means that whatever it is, we need an alternate security policing that will be armed, that will be equipped, that will have the capacity to police the various forest reserves, farmlands, and in all communities where these bandits and criminal elements have finally found a place of refuge unchallenged.
So are you saying the budget for the security challenge is not enough, or you're saying is enough because you spoke about capacity?
In all honesty, before you talk about the budget being not enough, you must show due diligence to that which has been released. Yes, if you compare the figures to other African countries that are around us, the funds are grossly inadequate. But the questions Nigerians are asking, the ones that have already been released, have they been rightly utilized? We are still hearing cases of soldiers taken to the streets in the northeast that they have not been paid allowances. We are still hearing stories of soldiers on the front lines complaining that bullets and ammunition are being rationed to them when they want to face the enemy. We are still hearing stories of terrorists possessing superior firepower, though that is questionable. But like I said, while we know and admit that the funds are grossly inadequate, those who have been saddled with the responsibility of managing the funds should first show due diligence that they have been properly utilized.
Do you think the mismanagement is as a result of being politically motivated, or do you think it's just a management function?
Can you come again, please?
Yeah, so this pocket breaches and this underutilization of funds, do you think it is politically more motivated, or do you think it's just a result of mismanagement of the funds?
It's a very complex situation. We know in the last administration, we heard that the security funds have become a slush fund for the politicians. This present administration promised to change the status quo. But what Nigerians are asking is that there should be evidence. I don't want to say in clear terms because right now there are no available facts. So these facts will come out in the next few years if the politicians try to frustrate the use of funds meant for security, and diverted it to politics. But what we are saying is, in every ideal situation, the security architecture should be alienated from the political events of the country. If you are dealing with security, let the professionals handle security. Build the capacity of your security personnel, security agencies, and insulate them from the political events.
Okay.
But what is happening in Nigeria is not so. We see there's still a strong connection to the political. There's still a strong connection between the political class and the security agencies.
Okay.
What we are saying is for them to be effective, for them to perform effectively and adequately, you must cut that bridge. Let the security people handle security, and let the politicians handle politics. I would not want to say that the politicians are diverting the funds or affecting the operations of security agencies. I will only as someone who has covered security for a long time, who has a knowledge of security systems around the world, I would prefer that the security architecture, the security system must be insulated from politics. They must not be used for political purposes. See, we are in this country where soldiers are being deployed to cover elections. They have no business. For over the years, over 10 years, Nigerians have complained. You cannot tell me that within 10 years is too small to build the capacity of your police. But whether we like it or not, the police does not have the capacity. That is why most of the time during elections, we resort to the military, who we know have the capacity. What we are saying is that build the capacity of the police, let them do policing work. Build the capacity of the military, let them do military work. Build the capacity of intelligence agencies, let them do intelligence work. There is no reason for soldiers to be deployed to go and curb peaceful protests by citizens, protests by protesting Shiite members. Soldiers have no business doing that. So once we are able to sit down and tell ourselves the truth as a country, but you see, they say power corrupts. Absolutely. Power corrupts, absolutely. It is easy to criticize, but the moment you get to that position of power and affluence, you forget that these basic tenets and basic principles, which you have criticized for a long time, it is time for you to fix that. And you refuse because you see that it gives you a false sense of power. It gives you a false sense of power. So what we are saying is, in as much as funds have been released, let the funds be released. Let the military do due diligence with the funds released, and then let them prove to taxpayers that, because the military, the police, security agencies are not revenue generating agencies. Let them prove to taxpayers that the funds were adequately released, and then make a case for more funds, because the bottom line is that we are underfunded. We are underfunding our military institutions, our security agencies. We are underfunding them. And the irony is this: in security, it is in the time of peace that you should spend more. Because if you don't spend more in the time of peace, you will be forced to spend unexpectedly in the time of crisis. And right now, we're in a time of crisis.
Okay, let me take you back to what you said earlier. You said something about insurgents, bandits finding refuge in the forest unchallenged. And I do know that quite a number of times, repentant bandits, so they say, have been granted amnesty and all of that. What is your take on granting terrorists, bandits, repentant ones, amnesty and reintegrating them back into the society? How do you feel about that one?
First of all, when you talk about the word amnesty for bandits and terrorists, it's because you have admitted that you don't have the capacity to stop them. If you don't, it's an indictment of our security agencies that we have. We are indicting ourselves as a nation, because any nation that has the capacity to be able to tackle crime effectively will not be talking about blanket amnesty. But now, how did we get to the position of amnesty? Because we have seen that in security circles, the people bear the brunt of the failure of security agencies. What do I mean by the people bear the brunt? As long as security agencies do not have capacity able to do the work for which they were mandated to, then you'll be forced to go to the negotiating table and be discussing amnesty. Because when terrorists have a free reign to go into a community, abduct women, girls, and children, kill as many, set property on fire, and your security agencies do not have that capacity to stop them, it is then you now begin to talk of, okay, how can we give you amnesty? Okay, we will not prosecute you. Stop the bad you are doing, which is an indictment of our security agencies and ourselves as a nation. And that does not reflect the amount of money that has been budgeted to curb insecurity. So when you talk about amnesty, everything about it is wrong. It indicts you as a people. It shows that your security agencies do not have the capacity to stop the rampaging armed gunmen, terrorists, and bandits. And because you know you do not have the capacity, you know that it is your citizens that suffer. They are being killed, maimed at will. So what do you now do? You now talk about amnesty. So for me, I think that if we have spent these amounts of money to equip our security agencies, this is the time we begin to talk about transparency and accountability. And then because you are talking about transparency and accountability, you are saying that now we have spent this money. Why is it that you do not have the capacity to stop these people from killing innocent Nigerians? So everything about amnesty for bandits and terrorists is totally wrong.
Oh, all right. Is there a point in the future where you see an end to all of these issues of insecurity?
I said it earlier. It is possible. We are not the first country that have had security challenges. We are not the first country that have had this kind of challenges. Now, those countries that have had these challenges, how did they tackle it? You see, we don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. All we need to do is the engineering. This has been designed here. Get that design, study it, and implement it. What we are saying is that we should put religious, we should put ethnic, we should put regional sentiments aside. We have a problem that is affecting us as a nation. And truth be told, the moment you think that if it is happening in Maiduguri, it will not affect Lagos, you are lying to yourself, because funds that will be used to develop Lagos will be channeled to Maiduguri. So you see, the children in Lagos will still suffer. So as a nation, we cannot ignore what is happening. What our leaders need to do is they should be nationalistic and they should be patriotic. They should put ethnic, religious, or whatever sentiment. A criminal is a criminal. There is no Christian criminal. There is no Muslim criminal. A criminal is a criminal. But the moment you begin to see it from the lens of religion, the lens of ethnicity, Fulani, gunmen, you see you are already getting it wrong. Gunmen are gunmen. Whether you are from Fulani, whether they are Igbira, whether they are Edo, whether they are Igbo, or whether they are Yoruba, as long as they have taken arms against the state, they should be dealt with as people who have risen against the state. The moment we get to that position as Nigerians, and then we look at and say, what has given these people an advantage over our security agencies? Nigeria is a big country. These people have access to forests and several other places. Then you now evolve a security strategy where the people are involved. You equip them and you train them, and you put a kind of structure that they will not be able to run rogue or run riot. Then at the first point of call, they will be the first responders to any insecurity challenge. And then after they respond, what the police will come and do, or whatever security you have will come and do, we come as a big brother to make sure that everything is done properly, everything is done rightly. Those that need to be prosecuted need to be prosecuted.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Amadine, for joining us on the show this morning. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for joining us on the conversation this morning. It's been such an amazing show, and I hope you had fun. I hope you had fun on the show.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Don't forget, you can be a part of the conversation. You can stream the conversation on www.tostvnetwork.com. You can also be a part of the community. Follow TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also subscribe to TOS TV Network on YouTube so you do not miss out on any of the amazing content and lineups that we have there for you. My name is Adesuwa. I'll see you.
And I am Merciful Ajinamo. Don't forget, COVID-19 is real. Stay protected, protect yourself and your loved ones, and stay safe.